Good morning, afternoon, night, wherever you are in the world, to everyone. Welcome to this month's Solid World. I am Jesse Wright, lead of the Solid project for the Open Data Institute, and we're very excited to be bringing Solid World to you this month. I'm currently based in the UK. Let's go around and just see where everyone's based while we wait for a couple of minutes for everyone to join. Jeff, I see you've got your mic off. Where are you today?
I'm in Portland, Oregon.
Very nice. I think we've got quite
Uncharacteristically sunny.
beautiful. I also have sunshine coming in, which is very uncharacteristic of the UK, so I'm quite happy about that. Wilfred, where are you calling in from?
I'm also in Portland, a little bit distant from where Jeff is, but I'm also enjoying this beautiful morning.
Lovely, lovely. What about Eric and Hugh, given you're on Wilfred's team, where are you based?
Hi, I'm in St. Petersburg, Florida.
Lovely. And Hugh?
I'm also in Portland, Oregon.
Very nice.
You got a
Portland's the
good
place to be.
delegation of Portlandia here this morning, huh?
Very nice. Keeping with the US theme, Louise, where are you at the moment?
Well, I'm sitting in the Empire State Building in a phone booth talking to you guys in New York.
Wow, very nice, very
Wow.
fancy.
With nice weather outside.
Damn. Elf, over to you.
So I'm originally from Europe, but now I live in Mesoamerica, so in the mountains, an hour drive from Mexico City.
Sounds lovely, and I'm enjoying the new background of Elf for today. Elf always has a different background to keep it interesting, to keep us on our toes. And speaking of different backgrounds, Eric, where are you at the moment? Is this an airport?
I'm in a biohackathon in Japan.
Oh.
It's just after midnight, and so a good fraction of the people have left, but gives you a good idea of how many people are usually at these biohackathons.
What is the biohackathon? What are we hacking?
Let's see. A bunch of people come up, stand up, and say, "Here's what pitch, here's what I want to work on." And in my particular one, I'm working on clinical decision support systems for genetic variant indicators for increased or decreased metabolizers of medications. So something that is going to actually affect how much you prescribe yourself.
Very, very fun stuff. I'm impressed.
Geeky fun.
Yeah. Ben, over to you last, and then we'll kick off because it's almost 5 past.
Well, it's not so sunny here, but I'm in the Netherlands, close to the German border. In fact, I'm so close to the German border, if people come to visit me and they miss the exit, they're in Germany. But it's good to have some rain. We've had sun for too long, so we're not in a drought yet, but we do need the rain a bit, I think. So, not complaining.
Sun for too long isn't that a problem to have? What a shame. Alrighty, well, let's make a start. Welcome again to Solid World for those people who have joined us in the last few minutes. Before we start, this webinar will be recorded and shared on social media. So if you need to drop any point, don't worry. And we'll have a Q&A at the very end after all presentations. If you have questions throughout, feel free to throw them in the chat. We'll have people at the ODI monitoring them, keeping an eye out, and then we'll come and answer all of your questions at the end. So I'm your host. Today we'll get updates from Louise and myself from the ODI side. We'll get updates from Elf Pavlik on the community group, updates from Jeff on the practitioners group, and an update from Eric on the linked web storage group. And then we'll jump into the exciting parts of today's presentation and hear from Ben about YAO ID and all of the work that is going on in the Netherlands. And then we'll hand over to Wilf, Hugh, and Eric to hear about all of the work happening with the PASS project that I'm very excited to hear about. So let's get started. And I'll hand straight over to Louise to start with updates from the ODI.
Cool. Thank you, Jesse, and hello, everybody. We are delighted at the ODI to confirm that we have secured funding from Google.org, which is the foundation side, and that funding is very much to maintain the core infrastructure of Solid and to support some of the use cases that we'll look at as well. We have a very detailed delivery plan. You'll probably remember, I think when I spoke before, I talked about the ambitions of a $10 million fund that we were trying to achieve. We still have that ambition, so we continue to leverage the fact that we've got some funding from Google in order to try and unlock other funding as well. And as a result of the Google.org funding, we have agreed certain work packages and activities with outcomes that we need to achieve. I think somebody's put, what does ODI stand for? The Open Data Institute. Sorry, I just noticed that coming up in the chat. So this work package here is the project oversight work package 1. So the activities are on the left-hand side and the outcomes. Again, Jesse's going to take you through some more of the other work packages as well. I'm just going to look at this project oversight piece. So what we've been busy doing since the last time we met is basically mobilizing the team that's going to support Solid from within the ODI. Basically ensuring that we have the resources that's needed in order to support the efforts and support the community as well, so that we do make progress and we're able to offer that help to the community as we go. So we're really excited that we've managed to bring in some new technical roles, like senior developers. We're in the final process of the role for a front-end developer. We've actually brought in a couple of senior developers because there's enough demand for other work within the Open Data Institute as well, within the ODI. We're also in the process of appointing and recruiting, I think we're at final stage, with a community manager. And you will also know that we've had Lily join us as the project coordinator as well. So it actually feels really exciting. I think I said to Jesse, you gang need to go and have your sort of area where the team can bond and work together within the ODI. So it's lovely to see it all come to light and be real. So we're excited about that and with the new people starting. The second piece of work that we've done since we last spoke is we would have designed the governance model for the initiative. And we have recruited and stood up the advisory committee, and some of the representatives on that committee are on the call today. And we had our kind of first meeting, which was kind of a get to know you type of meeting, and also to sort of lay out what our ambitions are for the project going forward. And that's been really good, and it's quite a diverse mix of people with different expertise, which is always really useful to ensure that we pay attention to all aspects of the project, and whether that's fundraising or whether it's the technical side of things, we've got the right people in the room to help us to steer this strategically. So the advisory committee had its first meeting. It's now due to have a second meeting, which is a slightly longer meeting than the one before. We've been really mindful to ensure that we recruit from across the globe. So there is always challenges with time sort of zones. So where we've got people in Australia and people in America, it's not always been possible for us to align the time zones. So we are making sure that we're doing sort of rotational participation as well, where that's a challenge. But really excited with the members of the advisory committee. And again, they will be helping us to make the right decisions, to make sure that we are on track with our roadmap, and then basically giving us some strategic advice as well. So, in the last kind of week or so, the person who's looking after the sustainability or helping us think about sustainability and funding on the advisory committee, myself and Jesse have had sort of good meetings with Ken. So it's really beginning to work. It feels like the support of the advisory group is there as well, to ensure that we move things forward as we should. So they're kind of the updates from my side, Jesse.
Awesome. Yes. Thank you, Louise. And we've been having our first few rounds of stand-ups, and it's been good to see the team coming together and start to feel momentum around the work we're doing for the Solid within the ODI. And what I'd like to take over and talk through for a few minutes is the other two work packages that we've got within the Google.org funding, which are maintaining and strengthening the technical infrastructure for Solid, and show you some of the work we're doing there and what's on our roadmap, and then also talk through the work package that we have around use cases and adoption of Solid. So this is work package 2. You can see the list of activities here. We'll be making the slides public so you can go and read these in detail. What I'm going to do now is go through a few slides for each activity. So 2.1 is about maintaining and scaling the open source infrastructure as opposed to code bases. So these are things like the project website, solidcommunity.net, which is the experimental pod hosting service, and other infrastructure around the project. We have made a start with updates to solidproject.org. Matthew, who's one of the developers that we've brought on, has been busy cleaning up the website, bringing in templating, using some modern libraries, and then also improving the UX and flows of walking through the website. If you go there now, you'll see that the apps page has been updated. So we have something a bit more like a Play Store for launching apps. There's a PR that's going to be merged within the next day or two that rewrites the homepage so that it's clearer to interact with, and also updates all of the messaging on the About Us and For Developers and For Users page so that the website's better for people that are new to Solid to come in and learn about it. We've also got responsibility for maintaining solidcommunity.net. This is an ongoing piece of work throughout the grant. We're going to be making sure that that stays live and that people can experiment against it. The usual warning with solidcommunity.net is this is an experimental service. Please do not treat it as a production-ready server. We do not have any form of guarantees around security for that service. It is purely an experimental development environment. The next piece of work then in our grant is around the open source code bases for Solid. So we're in the process now of triaging all of the code bases in github.com/solid, firstly to work out what are still actively maintained repositories and what aren't. Any non-active repositories we're either archiving or moving over to Solid Contrib. And now we're getting Matthew to walk through the active code bases and triage all of the open PRs and issues so that we reach back to a state where everything is better maintained. And then we'll be putting in better triaging processes, tagging for best first time issues across that organization. We've also, in parallel to this, got some people in the community working on a grant to update SolidOS and improve some of the user experiences around SolidOS. Tamia, who has previously led a lot of the work on SolidOS, is leading this on the community side. And there are some areas where support is wanted, and potentially you can be funded to support on that if you're a front-end developer. So if that is of interest to you, not funded by us, funded by NLNet. So that is if that is of interest to you, please get in contact with us, and we can put you in contact with Tamia. The next part of our grant work is to provide a non-experimental service for Solid that nonprofits, open source projects, SMEs, and social good applications to you. For this, yes, Inrupt has donated a license of the ESS to the ODI, and will be whitelisting applications that can be used against this server. If you are working for an academic institution, a nonprofit, or an SME, and you're wanting to build a Solid application and go to production and want to use this service for pod hosting, please reach out to us so that we can support in making that available to you. And in addition, we'll be working on some of our own applications for Solid, and I'll come to those use cases that we'll be working on in a second. The next piece of work that we're supporting within the ODI is work on the linked web storage group, which you'll hear about from Eric Prudhomme more in a second. So linked web storage is the W3C working group that is working on a technology stack similar to Solid in order to get working group endorsement. The official mission of linked web storage is to enable the development of web applications where data storage, entity authentication, access control, and the application provider are all loosely coupled. We are supporting on that through editing work. I am one of the editors on that specification, and also in supporting to help get various implementers of similar technologies to either adopt the specification or contribute to the specification. The next piece of work we're doing is supporting on contributor and volunteer structures. So this includes doing things like developing education and training materials so we can onboard more developers into the Solid community, and also working with people like Jeff Zucker and Elf Pavlik who are in the call to coordinate with the community groups and the practitioners groups to have governance structures in place so people are supported in contributing to the project in the ways that they want to contribute to the project. Then we've got the really fun part of our work packages, which are use cases. So this is where the ODI gets to support both existing use cases in getting more adoption, in working together to collaborate on shared challenges, and then also build out some applications ourselves. And the way we're doing this is firstly working on a landscape review to understand what organizations, what people, and what projects already exist around Solid. This builds upon existing work that Jeff Zucker and Elf Pavlik have been doing within the community to build a Solid catalog. I've got a link here. I think Jeff's also got a link in his part of the presentation. If you are working on Solid and you want the work you're doing to be visible, please go to that link. I think it's in the chat now, and add your projects there so we know about you and we can work with you. And the data from this catalog is going to be used to determine, for instance, applications that we present on the Solid Launcher apps page. It's going to be used to help us support use cases in collaborating and find other ways of supporting use cases. The next part of our grant work is about supporting the adoption of Solid within government and industry. This is something that we need to continue to work out the details of, and something that we're going to look to our advisory committee to really help us work in the right direction. But in general, it's going to be about developing, firstly, education and training materials so that startups know how they can use Solid to get value in their product and to develop applications to get consumer-facing products around Solid out there. Information for governments so they know where Solid can work as part of their infrastructure solutions, working with groups like the Linked Web Storage group to ensure that the next generation of the Solid stack in Linked Web Storage is a standard that organizations want to implement, and also do work like developing plugins for Solid so that we can integrate with existing applications and application ecosystems out there. We've also then got funding to directly support some social good use cases. We don't have a selection process for this yet, but if you are working on social good applications that you think need further support, then I would encourage you to make sure that those are visible in the catalog that I mentioned earlier, and also to directly reach out to us so we have visibility of the social good applications that you're working on for Solid. We'll then be doing some in-house application development of Solid applications. Throughout the next 3 years, we have committed to building at least 6 new applications for Solid, and that will be built by our engineering team internally. But all of the applications that we built will be completely open sourced under Apache and MIT licenses and free to use. We're looking at a few at the moment, but we've not really settled on the set of applications we're going to build. The first application that we're looking at is around volunteer matching. This is because the ODI has received a grant from the UK's Department of Culture, Media and Sport to build a standard for publishing volunteer activities. So this is like where you can volunteer, when you can volunteer, who you can volunteer with. And we'll build, in addition to that project, infrastructure for people to put personal preferences about what types of projects they want to volunteer on, their professional skill sets, and their background checks, like DBS checks, into a pod, so that you can be matched directly with volunteer opportunities that are appropriate to you. If you're working on use cases similar to this, we would love to directly coordinate with you. So please get in touch with the ODI if you're working on either volunteering or matchmaking use cases around Solid. We're also thinking about how we can make Solid more tightly integrated into the ODI's internal infrastructure. This is something that's in kind of early stages of investigation and we haven't committed to, but we may look at building Solid capabilities into the ODI's learning platform, where learners can already export statements about the kind of credentials that they've gotten on the learning platform and their learning records. And Solid may be where we can start to store some of those records so you can use it in other locations as well. And finally, we're scoping out the potential of building something like an app generator for Solid. I know this is something I think I talked to Ben about at the Solid Symposium last year, as well as Noel DeMartin. And the idea here is with generative AI now, you can build a lot of applications via prompting. And what we want to have is a guardrailed environment where you can build Solid applications via prompting and for them to be able to work directly with your personal data, and for this to be something that end users can directly use rather than you needing to be a developer to make sure that all of your data models are correct and to make sure that your application is actually a functional Solid application. To get use cases out there, moving on from the applications that we'll be working on internally, we're also going to be running a series of hackathons to get the community and to bring people into the Solid ecosystem to work on applications. The first hackathon that we'll be running will be in April next year, and it will be run on the week of the Solid Symposium and have both in-person and remote options. If you would like to get involved, then make sure you're following Solid ODI channels, which you would need to be here today anyway, and we'll be announcing things about that within the next 3 to 6 months. Finally, I just wanted to raise some upcoming events where ODI is going to be present. We've got the MyData conference in Helsinki in this September, so in next week. We'll be at a roundtable speaking about how Solid relates and does not relate to things like data spaces. Solid World December will be on the 9th of December and will be online. The link to sign up is in the chat. We'll be at the LSEG London Tech Leaders Summit on October 15th. And the Solid Symposium is going to be on April 30th to the 1st of May next year. So block that out in your diaries. It will be at the City of St. George's in London. So you can also book your tickets to London now if you're feeling extra enthusiastic. And with that, I'm going to stop boring you with event details and hand over to our updates. Firstly, Elf, what updates have we got from you?
Thank you, Jesse. So I'm one of the co-chairs of the Solid Community Group at W3C. I have a few very short updates. CG is welcoming participation. We have weekly meetings. There is a link to the W3C calendar for the Solid CG. It's every Wednesday at 14 UTC. So it's pinned to the UTC. So if you're observing daylight saving time, it will be changing for you, but this is pinned to UTC at this moment. And again, we are open to look for a new date. So if there are more people who are coming to participate, we can always make a poll and try to find a more fitting date. So please don't feel discouraged if the date it's not fitting for you for the weekly meeting. We also using various matrix chat rooms, mostly the Solid specification, but there are a few other ones. So as well, please feel free to jump on the chat room and join the conversation. And you also can see the link to the overview with other links to the CG resources. To clarify, if someone is not familiar with what's the community group, working group, Linked Web Storage Working Group will produce an actual standard, W3C standard, which will be the foundation for Solid. But since the working group has a limited time span and also much more limited scope, it will not be everything needed for a sophisticated UX and DX in Solid ecosystem. There is a need for much more than what Linked Web Storage can produce. So again, I see it as a foundation, but we need to address many more technical requirements and specify at least draft things. So everything produced by the CG is a draft report or final report. It's not a standard, but it's an incubation space that can accelerate creating a standard. So already some of the drafts from CG were proposed as an input to the working group, and they will inform and possibly contribute to the Linked Web Storage. So given that, CG needs is looking to engage with more participants. I would emphasize implementers. So often people work on specifications by drafting text, but if it's not going hand in hand with implementation, sometimes we can get disconnected with what actually works, what doesn't work. And if people are implementing things and provide feedback from the implementation, it results in much better specifications that are grounded in that implementation experience. So there's already many people implementing different aspects of Solid, but we always can welcome more active participation, more feedback. And also currently there is really strong representation from ECMAScript community, so people using TypeScript, JavaScript. There are other languages also to some extent represented, but I think it would be great if there was more representation from all the other languages. So people use Java, PHP, Python, Elixir, Rust, Zig. Like there's so many amazing programming languages that people can use, and they already have often RDF tooling. So yeah, it would be amazing if people using more diverse programming languages provide their feedback and try to implement Solid drafts. We are also trying to improve the state of the test suites, and not all of the drafts have tests, and it's not easy to test conformance of those implementations. So there is an existing test suites and test harness. It's using Karate DSL and it's written in Java. So it's currently unmaintained. If someone works with Java and would like to help with that, and also if you don't even work with Java, Karate DSL is much simpler Gherkin/Cucumber based language. So you're also welcome to help improving the test coverage of different drafts. And last but not least, we are looking for experts in technologies. So just to name a few, there's many more opportunities to contribute with your expertise. But just to give you examples, we heavily rely on data shapes. So Shackle and Shex. Jesse is one of the experts currently with Shackle. Eric has been for a long time a pillar of Shex expertise in community, but we always can welcome more people who are comfortable with those technologies. For the interop, we often talk about reasoning and some maybe entry rules. So also some expertise would be amazing, especially for catalog and Solid efforts. We try to use some SCOS taxonomies. We currently also could welcome more expertise in that field. And in general, designing ontologies, aligning ontologies, working with data shapes. For all the interop in terms of different business and knowledge domains, this will be very fundamental. And again, that's to big extent out of scope for the working group. So the CG will need to advance those topics. And again, we definitely can use help with your expertise. And also, last example is JSON-LD, compacting, framing, streaming. There are some interesting opportunities for using those technologies, which I think are still untapped. And as I mentioned, link web storage will be very generic foundation, but to have a practical applications, they need to work often, not be just generic application, but be specialized for specific business knowledge domains. So we also want to work with experts in those domains that besides the technology side, there's also expertise here. And I think that's also very much overlapping with the practitioners. So I included it here because we want that this domain expertise is driving the let's say UX and the needs of specific domains, but possibly practitioners would be a better kind of angle to engage here. So given that, I think I'll thank you for your attention and pass it to the next presenter. Thank you.
Thank you, Elf Pavlik. Jeff, let's hand over to you to hear about the practitioners group's update.
Hi, everyone. For those of you who don't know, Solid Practitioners is a group that is by and for people that are working on end user projects, things that people in the world can use. A little bit separate from things like specifications and tooling, which are for developers. Our project is for people that are putting Solid into practice, and with special attention to projects that work on the social good and that examine the social impact of the applications we're developing. We have bi-monthly meetings, which I'll detail a little later, and everyone is invited. They're online meetings that don't require pre-registration, just show up, and we'd love to have you. To give you some idea of the kinds of things we've addressed, let me just go over some of the projects that have been presented since the last Solid World. We had Rui Zhao talking about his SolidFlix and ChaiTalk applications, which are solid-based alternatives to Netflix and TikTok. We had Elf Pavlik, who just spoke on the Solid Efforts project that is related to the catalog and concentrates more on interconnections between the different parts of the Solid ecosystem and the technical underpinnings. We had Rahul Gupta, who is a co-chair with me of the practitioners group, presenting his work on Events Query, which is a new notification standard based on the upcoming query method and linked data solid specific extension called Events Query with linked data. So a very exciting work on notifications. And we had just last meeting, we had Virginia Balserio and Sarvan Kapodisli presenting their work on Dokali, which is a client for decentralized article authoring, publishing, annotations, and social interactions. Some of you may be familiar with it. It's part of the Solid OS suite of applications, and provides very sophisticated ways to annotate and describe academic and other kinds of papers and publishings. Next slide, please. So coming up, one of the things that we try to do in practitioners is present on verticals. In other words, we take a field and we try to get several different projects that are involved in that field, as well as pulling in not only technical people, but domain experts in the field. We previously had ones on medical care and on transportation. Transportation and mobility issues, and those were very exciting. We're going to have one coming up. I'm afraid I can't give you an exact date yet. I'm still pulling together the speakers, but it's going to be on the issue of food insecurity and local supply chains. So we have Tom Bird from the Baltimore Food Project, a very exciting project working with marginalized communities who are in areas where getting healthy food is not always possible. And so it's very involved with the whole issue of supply chains and access to information. We have Maxime Lecoq, who's been working with INRIA and Start in the Blocks on very similar issues, local farm supply chains, developing an ontology, a data food ontology around this. And so there should be quite fertile interchange of ideas there. We also have Lynn Foster, who works with the Value Flows Project, which is a more generic look at supply chains in general. It's not Solid specific, but they're also developing ontologies which can be used in Solid. So this goes along with the work in Solid is something that's, again, we try to do in practitioners, is to pull in not only Solid approaches, but other similar approaches within that are being developed in other places. As Jesse has previously mentioned, one of the things that has come out of the practitioners is the Solid Resources Catalog. And this is a way that we can find out what each other's doing. We can highlight each other's work. It serves, as Jesse said, to channel the flow of people that are developing things into the Solid ecosystem, so ODI can see what needs support and can help publicize and learn from these many projects. The Resources Catalog can only work with your participation. So I strongly encourage everyone to go visit the catalog and to fill in information about yourself as a person, the organizations that you work with, and most especially the applications and software and other sorts of projects that you have going on. The catalog is a little needs some polishing on the DX end, and the forms are a little clunky at the moment. I'm working on that right now. But please go there. If you have trouble getting your information in, contact me and I can assist you. So everyone is invited to participate not only in the catalog, but in all of our meetings. We meet on the first and third Thursdays at 1500 UTC. There's a link there to the JITC meeting for just come online at the time and participate. As I've already said, please go to the catalog and add yourself and your projects and your organizations. More info and everything I've said on the practitioners, a link to the meetings, videos of all of the meetings that I've just described, as well as many others. You can get all that information at our GitHub repo, README, with the link right there. So hope to see everyone at upcoming practitioners meetings. And if you have any questions, you can always reach me on Matrix. There's a Solid Practitioners channel. Thank you. On to the next speaker.
Thank you, Jeff. Eric, what is going on in LWS land?
So so this is Eric Perdomo. I'm not using the most professional podcasting equipment or in the most professional podcasting environment, but I apologize for background noise. So the working group is called Linked Web Storage, and it's tasked with providing, as Elf pointed out, the sort of the underlayment for a lot of the exciting Solid apps that people want to build. And so we're just providing some of the more basic infrastructure like authorization, identification, data identifiers, stuff like that. We're right now working on use case requirements. Oh, sorry. First, I should say we've got face-to-face coming up October 8th to 10th. in Ghent. And I also, on this slide, it talks about where the time of the working group meetings, which is Mondays, 10 a.m. Eastern time. So if you're not in Hawaii and want to join W3C and join the working group, you're encouraged to. If you are in Hawaii, then we're going to have to do a lot of time scrambling. Right now, so we're working on the use case and requirements. I've highlighted requirements in the spec in the slide, because before we're working on use cases and requirements and we're shoveling in use cases, and now we're going through and prioritizing the requirements that emerge from those use cases. We are getting some PRs on the core protocol, mostly from the editors, but everyone is invited to provide PRs, including radical ones that say, I think it should be structured like this, and split across these 7 documents or something like that. If you're not a W3C member or not a working group member and you submit a PR, you'll be asked to fill in a form that says, I'm not going to sue you, or nor do I have patent rights on any of this stuff. So we're trying not to make sure that there's some submarine patents, but apart from that, the world is invited to contribute. Our principal areas of work are, as I said, auth and identification, data identifiers, and right now our main goal is to map the use cases to an achievable set of requirements. Also on the slide is the working group homepage, but wait, there's more. On the next slide, we've got an ask from the community, which is to say we would like we would like the community to provide some pieces for us. Ontology design for trust and authorization models, and basically we just, a generalized ontology, probably start with a specific ontology for a particular authorization model and then back off to something that's more general, but you can decide how you would want to do that. So we're gonna have to do it ourselves if you don't, but we always like help. Creation of authentication and authorization specifications for user managed access, which is built on top of OAuth 2. And then we want to align these authorization with the authorization model ontology. So right now the specification has a separates the CRUD-like operations from the HTTP bindings that implement those operations, which makes it easy for one to use the names of those operations in, say, UMA scopes, like instead of read, write, post, that kind of thing. So we've set up the environment to make it pretty easy to bind these to UMA, but we were always interested in doing things like that. And then developing implementations that say, hey, this follows UMA. You can ask for identifiers, you can ask for authentication, etc., or authorization rather. And so anybody who wants to implement that on top of something, then we're excited to play with existing models. Remember, running code tends to trump wild ideas. So if you want to influence things, provide us with running code. So reach out to us if you have any, if you're interested in any of these topics. Thanks so much.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Eric. And thank you to everyone who's given updates. We now go over to the main part of the Solid World, which is our presenters. So first, I'd like to hand over to Ben to tell us about what is going on in the Netherlands with Yow.id and Muse. Ben, I am stopping my screen sharing. Take it away.
Let me just find the right screen to share here. That should be working. Someone can verify that my slides are up.
I can see your slides. Very much looking forward to the presentation.
Oh, my talk today is about the work we did for the Data Clause. And of course, as all startups go, we didn't have much time. So the title of the talk is how we built the Data Clause on such a tight schedule. But before we get into all of the details, of course, we need some definitions. So the audience is slightly broad here, some technical people, some not so technical people. So I thought I'd just start at the beginning. And we built a product. So what is the definition of a product? people may know the quote. It's if you're not paying for it, you are the product. This isn't new for the internet. This is also something that was said about television. Basically, television was a medium that provided customers to advertisers. And we see the same thing happening with the new media and the internet. This isn't something that goes unnoticed. Users do actually feel that they are becoming products. There's been research about this. There's been a lot of debate about this as well. I think the average consumer does have an awareness that they are being productivized. And if we look at the numbers, people aren't really happy with that. There's also the, let's say, fallout of all of these things, where to productivize a person, you need to be able to build a profile, you need to track them. So we have cookie hell, which leads to all of these places placing cookies, tracking us everywhere. And there's been a lot of talk about protecting the citizens. The EU is slightly further along than some of the other places in the world, but there's a lot of talk globally about this. But there isn't a lot of talk about the actual loss to users. And if you look at the numbers, just the amount of seconds you lose in your life clicking on cookie banners, even if you click yes or no, is just ridiculous. So this is part of where the data goes, is based on the architecture that we find ourselves in this digital landscape. And the conventional or classical model was, there is you, the consumer, there's a browser that you use to browse the web, and any site that you visit basically is a silo. The data, the application logic, the identity, some backend logic, it's all in one place. And there has been some work done to separate out the identity from the rest, but that still means that your data is in a silo. Now, people who are working with Solid and who are aware of Solid already recognize where this is going, probably. This is the, what if we could change that? What if we could stop data exploitation from big tech and empower users? And that's what Solid to a large degree is about. And that's basically just by separating out the storage from the rest of the application. So you, as a consumer, have ownership over your storage. And this is what the core of Solid is. There's storage on the one side, identity on the other. There's a client-side application that you as a consumer visit. And there are server-side applications that can service things for you. That was the definition of Solid. Of course, Solid isn't a product. So we needed to go slightly deeper in how are we going to achieve this, which leads to the definition of how. Well, the original paradigm that people are probably aware of is, if you build anything, you can build it either fast or cheap or good. Maybe you can pick two, but you can't pick three. With the partners that we were working with, there were short deadlines. There wasn't much time. We did a first closed pilot last year in April at latest, and we wanted to have a live pilot that could scale up to tens of thousands of users if needed in November, December. So that gave us slightly more than 6 months to build. So obviously we had to make something that was fast, and we had to do it within the time frame. So we had to slightly lower our quality standards, which wasn't too bad because it's a pilot. So most of the code was going to be thrown away after it was built anyway. The way we set this up was, if you build something incremental, that only works if you know what your end goal is. We didn't. We were exploratory in our development, and a lot of this was verified with both our media partners and the consumers. What works, what doesn't work, and how can we change this? So we worked more iteratively, but that still isn't very flexible. So it's a combination of working incremental and iteratively. We had a picture when we started out, but the end product was very different. It wasn't a Pollock for the people who know art, but it wasn't the Mona Lisa we envisioned either. More technically speaking, on the process side of things, what we used is a pre-agile methodology called a spiral model. This is basically, if you don't know what you're building yet, if you don't have a customer base yet, if you don't have specs that are more or less stable, then you need to reiterate every cycle. What are our risks? What are our goals? And how are we going to achieve this within the given time frame? And it's what we prefer to call pre-agile agile. Once you have a product, you can move way more easily into actual Scrum or Kanban or something more defined. But if you don't have that yet, you're also defining your process as you go along. Well, of course, who were we building this thing? The major party in this is the Dutch Data Vault Foundation, the Stichting Nederlandse Datakluis. And this is a non-profit that is the owner of the code, and that is the communicative spill with all the other partners. I came to help Datakluis from a company called Muse. We love the web. We work exclusively on web technologies. We're very cutting edge. We're also contributing a lot to the Solid ecosystem, so that's where people might know us from. We collaborated from Stichting Nederlandse Datakluis with Data Village, a Belgian company that does a lot of data manipulation and has basically a data clean room that you can guarantee to your consumers that the data, if it comes from their Solid pod, it will remain private because they have a clean room for that. We also work with Atumi. They provided the actual Solid pods. It is based on the Inrupt Enterprise Solid server, and there were the media partners. And this is what gave we a lot of validation within the Dutch consumer sphere, because these are the major media partners in the Netherlands. Basically, if you have these 5, you have the entire Dutch media. And we were lucky enough to be able to collaborate with all 5 of the Dutch media. The DPG, RTL, Talpa, and Mediahuis are commercial, but we were also partnered with the NPO, which is the Dutch public broadcasting. So it was both commercial and public broadcasters combined into one effort. There were some other partners that we worked with as well. Deloitte for some designs. Good Cloud was our hosting partner. Triple delivered basically any kind of developers we needed, testers, designers, back-end, front-end, just to be able to scale up and down during the process. And that's how we started building. Well, the definition of build is something that's also related to the product. It's a data vault. It was branded as YOUID from third-party data to first-person data. So it means that we get the information from you as a consumer instead of that we gather it about you. And YOUID is just a brand. When we launch next year, first quarter, it'll probably rebranded to Datakluis explicitly. But it started out for the pilot as YOUID. And of course, you can't build something without a blueprint. So we had a very good architect, Pieter van Everdingen, and he had a very broad scope architecture that would be, if all went well, usable for years. And we haven't had to change much on the architecture side of things up to now. Of course, zooming in further, the architecture consists of several things. All of these things you need to be able to access the data, have authentication. There's the user pod for Twitter websites, storage provider, single sign-on, all of these things. In more detail, this spirals to a large scope very quickly. There's all of these minutiae that you need to implement. But from a consumer perspective, there's basically only a couple of components. And we were lucky enough that we didn't have to build all of these components. We only had to build the actual web application, obviously, the web-facing components on the media partner websites, but we based our identity provider on the Node Solid server, the open source community sustained Node Solid server written in Node, obviously. The storage provider was already there, and the data collaboration platform in which information could be manipulated also existed, thanks to Data Village. So our final building drawing was basically just a couple of components and some bridges in between to connect the dots. Well, this made the Datakluis, but of course we need a definition of Datakluis now. What was the actual Datakluis? And this is the bit where, if all goes well and I press a button, we should see our actual Datakluis. Just to make sure that the slide moves along. Do people see the big blue screen?
Nope.
Oh no, I was afraid that might happen. Then it only shared the tab. This is the well-known demonstration part. Okay, this should work.
Yes, we see that now.
Yes, okay. Well, usually at this point in the demo, I would show people how to register. But because the pilot has ended, you can't really register. Luckily, I have an account already, so I can log in. And this is the actual product. This is live. So if the developers broke anything, you'll be the first to know. I'm logging into my data vault, and what you'll see here is basically just a front end. When people aren't onboarded yet, they don't have any data, but the onboarding process talks them through several steps in which they can add information, and the steps also explain why this information is useful and what it's used for. One of the things we learned with the media partners is they only really need 3 separate data touch points to be able to monetize. So they no longer need to add cookies to track users. And those 3 data points is basically your gender, which age group do you fall in, and where do you live. Well, if you have these 3 things, then a majority of the media partners don't actually need to do any tracking at all. One of the things that we promised with Data Clause is your data is yours, and there's also a bit of privacy. So this means you can fill in data, but you decide with whom do you want to share this data. You can share with all the media partners, or you can say, well, I just want to have a couple of these shared, no websites at all, or you could actually customize all data points across all media partners. Usually what we found is most people just don't really care at this point. They're just happy not to be tracked. They're happy to have control and ownership over their data. So they usually just connect all the websites. And this is something we've also had to explain to users. Just because you are able to use your data vault on all these platforms doesn't mean that these platforms all know who you are the minute you start using the vault. You only actually meet these partners when you visit their websites. If you do not visit, they won't know. One of the other things that's interesting for the media partners that we found is instead of just having a global profile, it's also for some of these partners useful to know what do you actually like as a person? Like, do you like sports, or do you like music or cooking? Are you into health things, or just categories like this? The actual categories come from an existing ontology from the AIB, which is an advertisement information bureau, but they have a lot of the lists and the things that actually define categories for audiences and for basically anything related to advertisement. So it's based on an actual ontology, but we've made it slightly more user-friendly. Since these things can be shared with anybody you like, it is in the backend just a solid pod. And this is the thing that makes us really excited as well. At this point, you would be able to share your information with anybody that talks solid, or with anybody that connects to our platform. So one of the examples we have about this is Show News, which was one of the demos we did. They had a web component, and the component says, hey, hi there, would you like to log in? Or if you don't have an account, make an account. I can log in, and the moment I'm logged in, I can get information based on what I have said that I like in my profile. So for instance, if I say I like Urk or Expedition Robinson, then it shows me information about those topics. And of course, you can edit the topics. So if I were to go to my data vault and I'd say, instead of Urk, I like some other things, and I save my preferences to be, for instance, Bondgenoten, or the B&B Full of Love, which is a very popular TV show. I've just changed my preferences on my other screen, and if I refresh, the site already knows that I'm logged in, and it fetches these new preferences like B&B Full of Love and the Bondgenoten. And one of the awesome things that this allows us is that instead of your information being in all of these individual silos, the information stays with you, and the media partners have to ask you for access so they can customize or personalize your experience. We already have a lot of enthusiasm from users. We did a post-pilot questionnaire, and there was a lot of enthusiasm about this, specifically because it gives users back ownership and control, and people really feel that things are out of control with the media and with the internet in general, I think. So usually at this point, I would do a Q&A or have people visit the pod or things like that. But as this isn't a live demo in person, if you have any questions or if you want to do follow-ups, you can visit me at LinkedIn. That's where I'm usually most easily to be reached. Or you can visit the DataClouse website and you can contact the more sales and marketing people from DataClouse. They'll also be happy to answer any questions you have. But that's, I think, all I've got.
Thank you so much, Ben. And if you've got questions for Ben, please do drop them in the chat. We can try and get some answered asynchronously throughout the next presentation. And then if there's time at the end, we can answer some then as well. So I now want to hand over to Wilfred Pinfold and his team working on the PASS project. And Wilf, I'll let you introduce the rest of your team.
Thanks a lot. I appreciate it. So I'm Wilf Pinfold. There are three of us that are going to present today. I'll do a little bit of the problem we're trying to solve and how we're looking at solving it. Hugh Harker, the executive director of Code PDX, a nonprofit here in Portland, will cover the technology itself and do a demonstration. And then Eric Jan will, who is the interoperability architect for Bitfocus, will talk a little bit about how we intend to connect there. And I think that'll become clear as I do just a couple of quick slides at the beginning. We're going to go pretty fast today. Hopefully leave a little bit of time at the end for questions. If you have any questions after this and we don't answer them during the meeting, please feel free to send us email. We're passionate about this project and happy to answer questions as we go. So the problem we're trying to solve is the complexity of applying for social and municipal services at a general level. This is very difficult. It's often difficult for those of us who have well-organized information systems, filing cabinets, documents, birth certificates, passports, et cetera, it's difficult enough, and that applies to all the states in the United States. This chart developed by Code for America, it shows which states have which of the federal programs, which of federal social services programs are online. So if there's a major blue dot there with a letter in it that represents Medicare or TANF or WIC or LIHEAP or SNAP, you'll see that that is online. The blue square indicates that there is some combination, in other words, some input sharing between those programs, but it still takes a substantial amount of time for a well-organized person to apply for these programs. And of course, most of the people applying for them are in less well positioned to make these applications, and particularly those who are suffering from housing insecurity or are in fact homeless. And we found this to be a major problem for the homeless community, is just having those documents and the amount of difficulty that causes and the barriers to getting these programs, which in many cases are their only route back into stable housing. So this is the problem we're trying to solve. The system we're pulling together puts Solid right at the center of this. We've developed a platform called PASS, which stands for Personal Access System for Services. And it allows us to provide a storage space for individuals to keep those documents. And those documents include documents that are covered by the California CCPA, which is the same as European GDPR, or very similar. Documents that might be HIPAA covered, so all our medical documents, documents that, like the 42 CFR Part 2, which is substance abuse documents, documents relating to your financial position and your educational position. They can all be put into a Solid pod and kept in the Solid pod under the control of the individual who owns that pod. Now, why is that so important for these communities, and where this is focused particularly at the homeless services community? It allows us to then create workflows that include those documents, but those documents can only be accessed with the permission of the individual who owns the pod. And that removes a lot of administrative barriers on both ends, both for the individual who wants to share those documents because they have them in a pod and they can share them very easily, but also for all the organizations that are that need to be able to check those documents but don't really want to have them online in a place where they can be accessed by hackers and bring the kinds of penalties that come with GDPR or CCPA if those documents are mishandled. So right in the middle, we've got the solid pass system with the personal data. There is a lot of other data that is available in the city. We've built a wiki infrastructure. We're in the process of building out a complete wiki infrastructure that keeps all of the information about all the services available in the 3 counties that are a part of the Joint Office of Homeless Services. Clackamas County, Washington County, and Multnomah County. They're all counties around the city of Portland. And then our plan is to create an easy way for the various municipal organizations providing these services, like the city of Portland, the state of Oregon, Multnomah County, and Metro, all of which are engaged in providing homeless services in one way or another, provide documents into the solid pod that can be verified and used for these systems. And then, of course, once we're able to do that, we can link to third-party applications to do things like provide pathways or missions to complete for those individuals. So a mission to complete might be to find a job, or a mission to complete might be to find housing. And those pathways can be managed using badges that represent the documents, so the documents themselves don't need to be shared more broadly than somebody who's issuing a badge. So it allows you to have this sort of third-party application that helps you follow a pathway to get to where you need to get to. As yet, we have not engaged this, but obviously one of the benefits of having all of this information available will be that you can use an AI engine, a fairly simple AI engine, to match up and look at the documents that you have in the solid pod, match them up with services that you might be eligible for, and advise you. So as you're now not only able to make an easy application because your documents are available, but in fact, the system can advise you on those services which you're now eligible for because of the documents you have. And if you want to go after a service for which you don't have the documents, it would be able to advise you which documents you need to go and get to be able to complete that. So that's really the big picture. Let me pass it on now to Hugh. Hugh, I'm happy to continue the slides, or I can just drop off and let you bring the slides up. Which would you like to do?
If you don't mind swapping through the slides right now, just keep it going smoothly.
Yeah.
So next slide. All right, hi everybody. Thank you for joining us this morning. I'm going to introduce you guys to a bit of software we've been a platform we've been developing called Pass that Wilfred introduced earlier. First, a little bit about my organization. Next slide, please, Wilfred. We're called Code PDX. What we do is organize community. We're a community organization that works with the technological talent we have here in the beautiful city of Portland to develop applications to address community needs through volunteer efforts. So everything we do is community built and community organized. So for this particular project, if you go to the next slide, please. So just threw in an overview of Solid, but I feel like everybody's we've had a good elucidation on what is important about this. But really, when we're looking at solutions to this particular issue, what attracted us to Solid was that it allows you to have this, you kind of turn the data ownership model on its head and give the person complete control of their data and where it resides, who has access to it, and for how long. It's also open source, and we can tackle a number of the paperwork and bureaucratic problems by creating a single source of truth for people, where all their documents can sit in one location. Next slide, if you would, please. So just a little bit about the scale of the problem we're working with here in Portland. We have a disproportionate large amount of the homeless population per capita in the United States. It's and the way we've constructed our social safety net is through a patchwork of NGOs, nonprofit organizations, charities, and government organizations that try to uplift people from that situation with marginal success, to be honest. So, and a lot of the big problem is there's a huge issue with when we spoke with these organizations, just maintaining paperwork. A large amount of time, the people who are experiencing this issue are just carrying around all their most important documentation in a plastic bag, which they often lose. If you go to the next slide, please, Wolf. So these documents that they need to access these servers, including their ID, bank statements, all like the rigorous and most of the time ridiculous requirements that the government puts on being able to access services that these people would need to transition out of this situation, are usually lost, misplaced, or confiscated during the raids that they do on the homeless camps. And so that sets them all the way back to square one, where they have to go and obtain all the documents again and wait for the bureaucratic process to get them those documents. And in the meantime, they're caught in this cycle of not being able to get out of homelessness because they don't have the documents, and then they're staying in homelessness because it's taking a long time to get those documents again, and it keeps going and perpetuating, and it just keeps people on the street longer than they need to be. So providing a place where people can maintain a secure digital copy of those documents that wouldn't be able to be lost in a raid or due to inclement weather. We have a lot of rain here, as I'm sure you guys are familiar with in the UK. That this might is a way that we can help expedite the movement of these people through the system and get them out of homelessness and help reduce those particular barriers. Obviously, homelessness is a wicked problem, meaning that there are many causes and many difficulties in being able to address it. But we feel like if we can take small steps to just kind of fix how the system functions as a whole, we can make a significant impact. So if you go to the next slide, please, Wolf. So with all of that in mind, we set a number of goals in order for this particular software package, which was to build this digital wallet, which we would use Solid in order to not expose a vulnerable population to further exploitation, which is different than if you store, as Ben noted earlier when he noted that if you are on using a software and you are not paying for it, you are the product. So in this case, we wanted to create a place where people weren't the product. And so that also helps with the custodial overhead that comes with maintaining very sensitive documents. Is if you put it into a solid pod, that takes a lot of the overhead away from the municipal services or the caseworkers or anything who would end up keeping people's HIPAA data or other sensitive data that, if lost, would expose them to liability. If just having it in a misplaced folder that ends up on their desk somewhere with all the other work that they have to do. So we wanted to create a piece of software that allows us to enhance the ability for caseworkers to process people's documentation and maintaining them in a safe and secure location. If you go to the next slide, please, Wolf. So we leverage for our MVP, we leverage the Solid Digital Framework, and this is just kind of, and what that enables us to do is create this utilize the pod in this and create a platform where we can achieve many of these goals that we outlined earlier. Basically, it's a place where you have document retention in a single place, where social workers can get spend less time getting data. They can request data. I'll show when I demo the platform in a minute. We'll show you exactly how it all works. If you go to the next slide, please, Wolf. And overall, it's a secure digital. Whoops, you skip this slide. Actually, this one got. Oh wait, you have all my slides that I was supposed to go down. I just realized you think you exported everything. Keep going. All right, keep going. Sorry. Oh, and we're a bit off order. I'll toss it over to Eric now to discuss Bitfocus and what they're attempting to do, and then I'll do a demo of what we can do with Solid.
Perfect. Sounds like a plan, Hugh. Thank you. So I'm Eric Jan at Bitfocus, which is a human services and HMIS case management system. HMIS stands for Homeless Management Information System, in use in the United States and Canada, regulatorily in the United States. Not sure about Canada. Going from more general, as Wilf offered an overview of the general schema of this use case, and more specific even than Hugh's specific software platform, I'd like to talk about one domain-specific use of PASS that could be implemented. And so from our perspective, so working in human services, there's a great unmet need for personal data lockers. And from a system like ours perspective, the main benefit could be facilitation of client consent acquisition, revocation, and tracking of that consent in many systems. But what can also be really powerful is direct client consent sharing, which makes the HIPAA third-party data sharing through software like ours less necessary. The client can directly consent to, say, some services that are available from the government directly, and then the software system like ours wouldn't have to be the business associate in that transaction. So that could be provide some great benefits. Also, there's benefits that are obvious to the homeless clients. They don't have to restate their eligibility or personal information over and over again at every single service location, as they may have to do now with the various disparate systems. Also, they can have their historical service information kept safe, their logs of consent for later revocation, or just key documents for service provision. Next slide, please, Wolf. Thank you. And there's one thing, though, that just briefly, that's very much unmet by the current system and that we need to find a solution for, which is that the health industry and human services will likely be going in the same direction as OpenID Connect is the way that identity resolution is being handled. That's because in July of 2025, the National Institute of Standards and Technology came out with their identity guidelines. Guidelines. And so that provides a technical architecture for information systems like ours to implement identity verification, presentation, and issuance of credentials for a person's identity, including OpenID Connect's verifiable credentials substandards that have been worked on by groups like the Qatar Initiative and their HEART project within OpenID Connect. We don't have this built into PASS. We don't have this built into Solid yet, generally speaking, but these are very general technologies that very much accelerate the growth of both Solid and PASS and help vendors like us to quickly implement this technology in a way that meets federal identity guidelines. That's the end of my presentation. Thank you. Next, on to the Hugh's presentation of PASS.
Okay. Why don't I go ahead and share the actual application at this point? All right. Go. Whoop, doing here. Okay, can you guys see that okay?
Yep, we got it.
All right, perfect. All right, so here's the MVP. So it's very much in minimal viable product status. So hopefully nothing breaks. But so what we did is we used the Solid community server infrastructure to set up the system, and we tried to smooth out the sign up and the login process as much as we could. Whoop. I'll just go ahead and log in. So we kind of have to do that interchange there, but we want to see if we can smooth that out even more. So yeah, this is the general platform. We built a messenger in it. So if you have a somebody on your contacts list, and it's all based on like this list right here, where you can add people just by knowing their username. You can identify them however you want to do that. This was important with working with this population, as they aren't always keen to share their exact identity and will give an alias. But once you have somebody's username or any information, we've set up a couple different Solid hosts to work with here. You can go ahead and add them as a contact. And then from this page too, you can, view their profile if they have anything. You can send them a message, and we just built standard CRUD for edit and deleting. From here, we also, because we're working with the homeless information system, we integrated the HIMS data that can be set and saved to your pod in here through the civic profile. And this specific information can be shared with a caseworker or a government organization. And we're going to work on integration to connect it directly to a PDF using the URI integration, URI interface. And then, of course, we have the place we can actually store and add documents and share them with anybody on your contact list. And then, once it's shared, they'll have access to it. If once it's expired, they won't be able to see it. So that's a nice thing about it. You can add documents. This interface is admittedly still a little bit clunky. But hopefully it works. Oh, yeah, and we have a separate thing for Plateau and stuff like that, for images and things like that. And go ahead and uploads it to Solid, and then you can share it out with anybody. Which is, the express purpose of this particular bit of this platform. So oh, I did an issue there. Anyway, so that's generally how this works. We have it's all on GitHub if you want to take a look at it and download it and launch a local version or put it up on a server and play around with it. Or we have a bunch of issues that still need working on if you want to help contribute. So this is, but this is the general platform as it stands right now. So we can always log off. And if you want to get in touch with us, we got a whole bunch of information about how it works, who we're working with, and how that is moving along. And just to go back to the future plans with this. So now that we have like a working wallet that can share documents across the network, we're going to work on improving the homeless information system form, and we want to do auto generation, which is similar to another product that we've developed. We also want to integrate, we have Real ID here in America that's slowly being adapted across the nation, but there is a digital way to integrate those directly as a shared document that's been validated by the government. So we want to just being able to get people a consistent ID is very, very important, as it is one of the things that really, in terms of bureaucratic stoppage, creates a blocker for getting the services. They often lose their ID. We also want to improve, the bit of a clunky user interface that we have right now. And we want to actually kind of grow it out beyond just the homeless services. There are other services in the city that desperately need attention, like our current parking software is a nightmare. And see where we can scale it up from there. And so that's generally what we're trying to do here. And so if you want to take a look at the product, all these links will be available in the presentation that will be distributed after. But you can test it out. The server is up and down as we're kind of maintaining things, so it may or may not work. But we're always like working and building it out. But yeah, you also have access to GitHub if you want to take a look at the repo, as well as the wiki. And we're right now, my organization's in the group of planning what 2.0 looks like. And we'll be launching that working session late this fall. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Hugh. I'll pass back to you, Jesse.
Thank you very much. It's been a fascinating presentation. I see some questions that have popped up in the chat throughout, and if you have any more, please do put them in either the Q&A or the webinar chat. The first one that I'll pick in on is around credentials and verifiability. So I've seen a question come in from Joel G. How does the authentication / verification of a document performed by one agency persist and may remain valid for the second agency?
So there's a number of approaches we've looked at here. Initially, I think we can do this with a sort of just a trust circle within the community that provides these services. That if you know a caseworker and that caseworker has validated that they've seen a document, that document can then be put in as a valid document with a digital signature on it. So that would allow us to do that just with the support of the homeless community providers. As Hugh pointed out, our objective here is to make sure that documents are placed in the pod directly from the government agencies. In other words, the trust remains with the government agency. So, you're in the United States, your driver's license is in fact issued by the state. And so that's the typical mechanism for providing an ID. So once the real ID is there, that will be a digitally verifiable ID at the state level and actually at the national level, because the real ID is recognized by all states. So that's how we intend to start. We intend to start with the community validating its own documents. So as you know, the individual who did see it and it's there. But over time, our intent is to work those documents into federal documents, so you can get your passport. There are several documents that are already out there. For example, the Veterans Administration produces a VA document that's digital that we can put in the pod. So it's happening gradually. The thing that's really missing is a place to put these documents where you have full control over them.
Thank you, Wilfred. And I'll hand, I think, into what the follow-up answer here might be, which is from Luke Derry. We've got a question about how we prevent the manipulation of data by a user in their pod. So could we maybe have an explanation of how we're making sure these documents retain their integrity?
Yeah, that's pretty well solved technically with encryption mechanisms and digital signatures. In other words, obviously you want to know the provenance of the document. So if the document is issued by the state of Oregon, you need to be able to check that there's a digital signature that's valid of the state of Oregon. And so we'll use digital signatures in that way. We also intend to encrypt many of the documents here, so they're more secure even within the wallet, within the pod. So there'll need to be a key structure here that allows you to issue documents that can be validated. So, if there's a public key available for the state, you can always check that against the public key that document was issued by the state. So that's how, you obviously you can go in and modify the document, but then it's no longer valid. So you can always check back, and this is what we've got to get the state and the municipal entities to do, is to publish public key and then sign the documents as they're issued. We can do that within the community of homeless service providers quite straightforwardly, but getting municipal organizations to start to sign these documents and issue them as valid, that can be recognized fully at the state level, is still work to be done.
Awesome. Thank you, Wilfred. Hugh, I saw you had your hand up. Did you want to elaborate on that at all?
Oh, I was just going to quickly add that a lot of the times with some of the documents you need, it's just they're already maintained on the back end by the organization issuing them. So if it's like a utility bill, banking statement, these type of things, there's already a mechanism for checking back with the issuing organization. So the likelihood of forgery it goes down precipitously, because many times the system of trust that we already have in the United States, where you bring a paper document to somebody, they're going to have to go back and check it anyway, and that's the existing system that we already have. So just providing digital documents, versions of those documents, we're just building on the system that already exists.
Wonderful. Thank you, everyone. I noticed that we are past 1/2 now, so we are at the end of Solid World. I would like to thank everyone for coming, presenting. All presentations today went very smoothly, and I am very impressed with everyone's talks. So thank you so much to Ben, Wilfred, Eric, and Hugh for their main presentations, and also to Jeff, Elf Public, Louise, and Eric Prudhomme for their presentations as well. Thank you, everyone, for joining. We will see you at the next Solid World. And please, if you've not already joined the communication channels for Solid, which you can find from the Solid Project website, please do, to stay up to date with everything Solid. Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful afternoon. Bye now.
Hey, everyone.